My name is Corrine Moy. I'm 30 years old, and until 6 weeks ago, I thought I was about to marry the man I'd spent nearly a decade building a life with. We had been engaged for 3 years, long enough that people stopped asking when the wedding was and started asking what we were waiting for. The truth was simple. We were saving a house, a future, something solid. Our wedding date, August 10th, was already circled on calendars, deposits paid, plans quietly locked in. And then there was his trip, 6 weeks across Europe, France, Italy, Spain. A trip of a lifetime, he called it. He was going with 5 women he knew from college, friends he referred to as his sisters. I didn't love the idea, but I trusted him. Or at least, I trusted the man I thought I knew. I drove him to the airport myself. I helped him check his luggage, walked him to security, watched the departure board flicker his flight number like it always had. Routine, predictable, safe. It was right there, under the harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by rolling suitcases and the smell of burnt coffee, that he said it. "Oh, by the way," he said, adjusting the strap of his backpack, his voice casual, too casual. "I think we should take a break while I'm gone." I laughed. I actually laughed, because surely I'd misheard him. "A break from what?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "From us," he said. "We'll talk about it when I get back." The world tilted. "You're telling me this now?" I whispered. "At the airport?" He checked his phone. The boarding announcement echoed behind us. "I don't want to miss my flight," he said. "It's not a big deal. We'll figure it out later." Later. As if our relationship were a streaming show he could pause without asking if I wanted to keep watching. I stepped closer, my voice shaking despite my effort to stay calm. "What does a break even mean? Are we still together? Are you seeing other people?" He sighed, already half turned toward the boarding line. "We'll talk when I get back, Corrine." He hugged me then, but it was rushed, awkward, unfamiliar. The kind of hug you give someone you're trying not to feel guilty about. And then he walked away. By the time I reached my car, my phone buzzed once, then went silent. Calls failed, messages undelivered. Blocked! Everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, even email. I sat in the driver's seat long after the airport traffic moved on, my hands resting uselessly in my lap, replaying every second of that moment. The timing, the certainty, the way he never once asked how I felt. That night, I didn't sleep. The next day, I tried again, and the day after that, and the one after. Nothing. He vanished as completely as if I'd never existed. I stopped answering friends' texts. I stopped checking wedding planning apps. I stopped opening the shared savings account because seeing his name next to mine felt like a joke I wasn't in on. I told myself it was temporary, that maybe he just needed space, that love sometimes survived worse things than silence. But on the 5th day, something inside me cracked. This wasn't a break. It was an exit with a return ticket. And I was expected to wait quietly until he decided whether I was still worth coming back to. The silence didn't come all at once. It crept in, slow and suffocating, filling every corner of my life until there was nowhere left to breathe. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that maybe he just needed a few days to clear his head, that this was some poorly executed attempt at independence before marriage. I clung to those thoughts because the alternative, that he had deliberately cut me out of his life without a conversation, was too painful to sit with. But days turned into a week. Then, too, I checked his social media compulsively, not because I wanted proof of cheating, but because I wanted proof of existence. This was a man who used to post pictures of his breakfast, who documented every gym session, every sunset, every minor inconvenience. And now, nothing. 6 weeks in Europe, and not a single post. It felt intentional, surgical. I realized he hadn't just blocked me, he'd erased me, locked me out of his world while he lived freely in it. Meanwhile, my life stalled. The wedding binder sat untouched on my coffee table. The dress-fitting reminders kept popping up on my phone like cruel jokes. I couldn't bring myself to cancel anything yet because canceling would make it real. Friends started asking questions. "Isn't he back soon? How's Europe treating him? Are you excited?" I smiled, lied, deflected. Every night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that airport moment. I analyzed his tone, his timing, his refusal to explain. I wondered how long he'd planned it. Days, weeks, months? Had he already decided I was optional? By the 5th day, something shifted. I woke up with a headache and the unsettling clarity that I was grieving a relationship that hadn't officially ended, but was already dead. I opened our shared savings account and stared at the number we'd built together. Every dollar suddenly felt heavier, tainted by uncertainty. That was when I made the decision. Not out of anger, out of self-preservation. I drafted a message, deleted it, drafted another, deleted that too. Eventually, I settled on the truth, simple, unembellished, impossible to misinterpret. I'm calling off the wedding. I'm ending our relationship. I won't be waiting in silence for someone who chose to disappear. I sent it to our group chat at 10 o'clock a.m. Then I turned my phone face down and cried for the first time since the airport. By noon, the chat had exploded. Questions, shock, confusion. What happened? Is this a joke? Did something happen in Europe? I didn't answer right away. I needed the space he'd taken from me. At 2 p.m., my phone buzzed again. His name. A message. Please call me. We need to talk. My chest tightened. I typed back slowly, deliberately. Anything you need to say can be said here. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. No, this is between us. I stared at the screen, finally understanding something that had eluded me before. Privacy, in his world, only mattered when it protected him. You made this public the moment you blocked me, I replied. Chat is fine. Hours passed. At 6 p.m., another message came through. Please pick me up at the airport Thursday morning so we can talk this out like we planned. I didn't hesitate this time. That was your plan, I wrote, not mine. His flight was scheduled for 9 o'clock a.m. I wished him luck. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks. Not because it hurt less, but because, for the first time since the airport, the silence was mine. By morning, the silence had shifted again. It was no longer empty, it was loud. My phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages stacked on top of each other until I stopped reading names and started counting seconds between notifications. Friends, family, people I hadn't spoken to in months. Everyone suddenly wanted clarity, context, reassurance. I understood why. From the outside, it looked abrupt. 3 years engaged, wedding date set, then gone. But what they didn't see were the unanswered calls, the blocked messages, the 6 weeks where I existed in limbo while he lived freely somewhere between Paris cafes and Spanish beaches. At 10 a.m., I finally responded in the group chat. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't insult him. I wrote exactly what happened. He told me we were taking a break at the airport as he boarded a 6-week trip. He blocked me everywhere immediately after. I waited. I reached out. I got nothing. I'm not willing to build a marriage on silence. The reaction was immediate. Shock, disbelief, anger, most of it directed at him. Some people tried to soften it. Maybe he just panicked. Maybe it was miscommunication. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? I stared at those messages longer than the others. How many times are women expected to reinterpret cruelty as confusion? That afternoon, he started messaging again. Not explanations. Requests. Please just call me. We shouldn't be talking about this in front of everyone. This is private. I didn't reply right away. I watched the 3 dots appear and disappear like a nervous tick. He wasn't asking how I was. He wasn't apologizing. He was trying to regain control of the narrative. When I finally responded, my hands were steady. You don't get privacy after disappearing. That was when he changed tactics. I didn't mean it like that. It was just time to think. You're blowing this up. I felt something snap, not loudly, but cleanly. I realized he had prepared for a fight about cheating, about jealousy, about insecurity. He had probably rehearsed lines with his friends, how to calm me down, how to make me doubt myself. What he hadn't prepared for was this. For me, refusing to argue at all. For me, focusing on the one moment he couldn't explain away. The airport. That evening, I received another message. I'll meet you when I get back. We should talk face to face. I thought about the ring then. My grandmother's ring. It had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandmother had worn it through war, through loss, through a marriage that outlasted everything. I had given it to him believing I was passing down something sacred. I wasn't going to let it disappear with him. We can meet, I wrote. Public place. I want the ring back. The typing stopped for a long time. When his reply finally came, it was short. Fine. That was when I knew. He hadn't expected me to ask for it back. And for the first time since the airport, I felt something close to calm. Because this conversation, the one he thought he'd control, was about to happen on my terms. We met at a small coffee shop downtown. Glass windows, steady foot traffic, nowhere to raise his voice without drawing attention. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a table in clear view of the door. When he walked in, I barely recognized him. He looked thinner, tired, like someone who'd spent 6 weeks rehearsing explanations instead of enjoying a vacation. For a moment, guilt flickered across his face, quick, controlled, gone before it could settle. Corinne, he said softly, as if saying my name gently would undo everything. I didn't stand. I didn't hug him. "Where's the ring?" I asked. He hesitated, then pulled a small velvet box from his pocket and slid it across the table. Seeing it there, my grandmother's ring, sent a sharp ache through my chest. I opened the box, checked it, then closed it and slipped it into my bag. Only then did I look at him. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "I never meant to hurt you." I didn't respond. He shifted in his chair, clearly unsettled by the lack of reaction. Europe was a lot. I just needed space to think. I didn't cheat. Nothing happened. "I don't care," I said calmly. He blinked. "You don't care?" "No," I replied. "What you did after you broke up with me isn't my concern." His brows knitted together. This wasn't the argument he'd prepared for. "What I care about," I continued, "is that you ended our relationship at the airport minutes before boarding a plane and blocked me everywhere without explanation." He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "I didn't say we were breaking up," he said quickly. "I said we were taking a break." "You don't get to redefine words after the damage is done," I said. "You removed yourself from my life completely. That's not a break. That's abandonment." He rubbed his hands together. "My friends said you'd freak out, that you'd accuse me of things you couldn't prove. They told me this was the cleanest way." That landed harder than anything else he'd said. "So you ambushed me instead," I said, "because it was easier." He looked away. "They thought you'd be insecure," he admitted. "They told me you'd make it ugly." I let that hang between us. "That's why you're confused right now," I added quietly, "because I didn't do any of that." His jaw tightened. "You blindsided me by canceling the wedding." I almost laughed. "You did that to me," I said. "I just finished it." He stared at the table, silent. When he finally spoke, his voice was small. "I thought you'd wait." There it was. The assumption that I'd stay suspended, grateful for scraps of attention, while he decided whether I still fit into his future. "I won't," I said simply. He excused himself to use the restroom. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I watched the door, realization dawning slowly. He wasn't coming back quickly because he had no one left to text, no one to coach him, no brain trust to help spin the moment. When he finally returned, his eyes were red. "I didn't expect this," he admitted. "I know," I said. We stood in silence. "There's nothing else to discuss," I said, rising from my seat. "Please don't contact me again." As I walked out, I didn't look back. Somewhere behind me, the man who thought he could pause me forever was realizing I'd pressed stop. I thought the hardest part would be over once I walked out of that coffee shop. I was wrong. The fallout didn't arrive as a single explosion. It came in waves. The first was his parents. They called me late one night, forgetting the time difference between coasts, their voices urgent and strained. His mother spoke first, carefully, like she was afraid I'd hang up mid-sentence. "We heard there's been a misunderstanding," she said. "We don't want you throwing everything away over a rough patch." A rough patch. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ring box resting beside me, like proof of a life I'd narrowly escaped. "There was no misunderstanding," I said evenly. "Your son ended our relationship at the airport." Silence. Then his father cleared his throat. "He said you knew he'd be unavailable during the trip." "That's not what happened," I replied, "and I won't repackage the truth to make it easier. They offered to pay for couples therapy, to mediate, to help us work through this." I declined, not angrily. Final. The second wave came from friends. People who had been neutral at first started asking harder questions. Why block her? Why tell her at the airport? Why wait 6 weeks to explain? His apologies in the group chat grew louder but less specific. "I'm sorry for everything. I handled things badly. I never meant for it to go this far." But he never said what he was sorry for. That mattered. Then came the social media reveal. One morning, curiosity got the better of me. I checked his profile. I wasn't blocked anymore. 30 photos appeared overnight. France, Italy, Spain, group shots, smiling faces, churches, museums, cafe tables bathed in sunlight. Not a single picture of him alone. Not a single mention of a break. It was a cover-up. He hadn't been offline, he'd been hiding. I closed the app without commenting, without reacting. Whatever version of reality he wanted to curate no longer included me. The letter started shortly after. Handwritten notes left with people he knew I'd encounter, the security guard in my building, the receptionist at my office. "Please don't throw us away. I love you. This doesn't have to be the end." Each one felt less like love and more like panic. By then, I had already booked my own trip. Scotland. My old college roommate lived in Edinburgh, and when I told him I needed a change of scenery, he didn't ask questions. Just sent me a spare key and a list of pubs. I packed light. No wedding shoes, no dress, no reminders of the life that almost was. As the plane lifted off, I felt something unfamiliar settle into my chest. Relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for someone else's decision. I was choosing myself. Scotland was colder than I expected. The air in Edinburgh cut sharp and clean, the kind that made you breathe deeper whether you wanted to or not. Stone buildings rose around me like they'd seen centuries of heartbreak and kept standing anyway. It felt like the right place to disappear for a while. My old roommate met me at the airport with a crooked smile and no questions. We spent our days wandering narrow streets, ducking into pubs when the rain started, arguing over whether haggis was bravery or poor judgment. At night, I slept without waking to phantom vibrations from my phone. My phone still worked, of course. His messages came anyway, through group chats, through friends, through accounts I didn't recognize at first. Apologies layered on top of each other, each one slightly more desperate than the last. I understand now. I destroyed everything. I'll wait until you're ready. I didn't respond. Understanding after the damage is just hindsight dressed up as remorse. One evening, sitting on a stone ledge overlooking the city, I finally blocked him everywhere. Not out of anger, out of clarity. It felt like closing a door gently instead of slamming it. Quiet, firm, irreversible. I thought about everything I'd nearly accepted. Silence as communication, absence as patience, uncertainty as love. I thought about how easily I'd been expected to shrink while he expanded. I didn't hate him. I didn't need revenge. I needed distance from the version of myself who thought being chosen later was better than being respected now. When I flew home, my apartment felt different, lighter. I rearranged furniture, deleted wedding folders, donated things I'd been saving for later. There was no dramatic final confrontation, no cinematic goodbye, just a steady, growing certainty that some endings don't need fireworks to be permanent. Sometimes the quiet ones are the strongest. And for the first time in a long time, the silence around me wasn't empty. It was peaceful.